Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I'd like to show you how I made this card. This is out of the new catalog, and the stamp set is called Charming Café, and it is in the catalog on page 25. And what I'm using from this stamp set is this oval here, this little bistro set, and this little cafe front. Then there are the dies, and here's the actual stamp set. So again, this, and this from the stamp set. Then these are the dies, and I am using the center oval to cut out the inside of this oval piece here. I'm using this little die to cut out my bistro set, and I'm using one of these dies. This one is nice because it comes with a couple each of a couple different dies, but on the inside of this I have this little floral spray here at the top, so it has two dies to cut those out. I didn't use the topiaries, but this set has these cute little topiaries that you could create a different kind of scene with, and there are actually three dies to cut that one out. So one of the main things I want to demonstrate for you today, this is a pretty clean and simple card. There's a little bit of coloring, and that's where the time comes in. But I want to show you a technique that I learned the other day. Wanda Williams, who's my upline, sent me a note saying that Gina K from Gina K Design, and her channel or her company is called Stamp TV, had illustrated a method for cutting out using dies to get a perfect cut every single time. And so what I'm going to do today is demonstrate that for you, because I think it's such a foundational tip to get a perfect die cut every time. Now, on this set, let's say that you wanted to make a piece that had this oval completely cut out like this. Using two dies over a stamped image, and let me show you a stamped image, and what I mean why this is so challenging to do is, let's say you had a stamped image like this. Now we're going to try and get this die placed on here so that the top and the bottom, the right and the left, have perfect spacing. And then when we get that right, we're going to try and put this piece in the middle. And you know, if you use a magnetic plate, sometimes the magnets move your dies around. And the die cutting blades on these are on different places here. On this die, the cutting pieces, or the cutting blade, is on the outside of this rim. And on this one, the cutting blade is on the inside. So you have to think in terms of how to space this so that the outside of this one cuts and the inside of this one cuts. And so sometimes what you're trying to cut is actually covered up. And so it's very difficult to get this on there exactly right. So the technique that Gina K showed on her video was how to get a perfect cut every single time. So I'm going to do that for you and just show that. And like I said, I don't often use the big shot on camera, but today I'm going to do that. And I'm going to show how to make that happen. So let me get my machine set up here so I make sure that I'm, oops, got to have the handle on the other side here. Make sure that I am set up exactly right. So you need your main platform, your thin die adapter, and a cutting plate to get started. Then what you do is you set up, and I've got just a little package of things that I'm planning on using here. I've got a little package, and what you do is you use dark cardstock. In this case, I used black, and you cut out your die shapes. Now, when you cut out your die shapes, what happens is if this is placed on here, oops, other way around, so that you can place this and see that you have a perfect, I'm trying to get this set up so that it's right. Okay, so if I set that up on there, and I'm going to bring this up, and you can see that I've got a perfect border all the way around for cutting. Then what you can do is once you've got that set up that way, you can use a little bit of washi tape to set this piece in place here across this. Then you can take the die for that piece, which is this piece here, and when you place that die in place, it drops into that little hole that's been cut. And you'll know it's perfectly in there. You can feel it go in, and now it can't be moved. It's in there securely. So now all we have to do is take that piece and put another piece of washi tape to hold the die in place on our paper, and put our cutting plate on and run this through the machine. And what ends up happening then is when we take this apart and I take these pieces off, my die cut, I've got a little bit of washi tape that I cut here, and you want to take off your washi tape carefully because you don't want it to tear your cardstock. But I'm going to bring this up so you can see it now. That has exactly the rim that I set on it for cutting. And you can be off a bit, but it's absolutely ensures you that you're going to get the right cut every single time. And when you've got a cut like this one, where you're trying to cut out and you're trying to set the top and the bottom and everything else, it's just tricky. And so this technique helps keep that from being so tricky and makes it infinitely easier. So I'm going to do that again because for what we're doing here, I need a couple more die cuts. So I've already stamped, and I'll set this up for you after I've cut, but I want to show the cutting again here. And I have a negative space piece that I've set for this, and that is the interior cut of this die. And it's easier to see on the black, but I'm going to set this up so I have exactly the right margin, right and left, and top and bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to set my piece of washi tape across here, and maybe a little piece down here, because I want that exactly in the right spot. Now I'm going to take my inside die and I'm going to pop that into place until I feel it settle around that die cut. Now it's set around that die cut and I can't move it, so I know it's in exactly the right place. So I'm going to use a little bit of washi tape over my die on both ends here and just set that in my machine, put on my top cutting plate, and I'm going to run that through. Okay, and now I'm going to take this off, and I should, again, taking off your washi tape very carefully here. and I should have a perfectly cut inside piece for our card here. And I'll give you some instructions as we get a little further along about setting up the placement of the stamps on the card so you come out in exactly the right spot. But there, and I'll show that to you again. Let's see what happened to my pokey tool. It's missing. All right, so I've got rim around the edge. I've got rim on either side of this, and that's good enough for me. I have one more die cut to make, and so I'll do that. And I'm going to pull off these pieces of washi tape so I can use them again. And I'm going to cut out the little bistro chairs. So I have my bistro chairs here, and I'll move this to this side, stamped. And then I should have my die cut all set for that piece. It's right here. Okay, so now I've got my, let's see, I think it's this way. Yes, this way. And so once again, I can get my my negative here set around there. Then I can take my bistro cut die and drop it into place, and I can feel it in there and it's not moving. And I can set that up here with a little bit of washi tape, and that is all ready to go. Then I can place my plate on the top here and push this through. And I just think this tip is brilliant because it gives you a very, very good chance of being able to make exactly the kind of die cut that you want to make every single time. And so let me move this out of the way now. And show you this piece that we just cut out. I'm going to release that from the die and take off my washi tape and bring this up so you can see it. And there you can see that there's exactly the same amount of border around the entire cut. I just think that was one of the most useful things I've ever learned watching a YouTube video. And so now I've got all of the pieces that I need to cut for this card. So let me bring the card back in. And there's that piece. Here's this little piece here. And then I cut the center out of my other piece. So those are the pieces that I need. Now I'm going to show you what you need to make this card. All right, so making this card, you need a card base that is 8.5 by 5.5 scored and folded at 4 1/4. Then you need a piece of Whisper White that measures 4 inches by 5.5. This is going to fit perfectly top to bottom with no border at the top and the bottom. The only border is going to be on the on the sides. Then you need another piece of Whisper White that's going to fit inside this one that is 5.5 by 3.5. All right, so let's just get started here. There's my card base all ready to go, and I'm going to tell you how to set up your stamping. Okay, so I want to start first with this piece that is 4 by 5.5. And this is the one we're going to stamp our little Café Bistro front here on the back of. And in order to do that, what I need to do is I want that to stamp so that it'll show through my piece here, the way I've got it set up here. And so you need a ruler and a pencil. So the center of this card here is 2 inches. So I just put a tiny little tick mark at the 2-inch mark here. Then, I look at my notes here. Then, the way this is set up, this little Café front here is set up to come at 1 3/4 inches from the top, this little part of the roof right here. So if I set this, now the stamp has a little bit of an 1/8 of an inch here. So I'm going to set this up, set this on my grid paper so that I've got the directions here, and I'm pretty sure this is straight. Set this at my 2-inch mark so it is straight across here. All right, giving myself the best chance for success. Then I set this down at, I know I want that little roof to come in at 1 3/4. Now at the top of this little stamp set, there's about an 1/8 of an inch that I can see here at the top of the stamp itself. So I'm going to go to the 1 3/4 mark and back up 1/8 of an inch and put a little tick mark there, because that's where I want to set the top of that stamp. Then I can eyeball it from right to left. So I am using my black Archival ink, and I'm going to be using my blends, and a lot of people say, and you probably can use your Momento Tuxedo black ink because you don't want your black to bleed when you color. But I have found that for the small amount of coloring that's on here, the Archival works just as well. So I'm going to set this back on here and use my grid paper again to set this to be pretty square. And then I'm going to come down, there's my upper tick mark and there's my lower tick mark. And I know that I want the top of that roof to hit right where that tick mark is. And then I'm going to try and eyeball that so that it's even right to left. And that little stamp should be right in the right place. Then on this stamp, it's the same kind of thing. This piece is 3.5 inches wide. So I'm going to set that on my grid paper here. And the center of this is 1 3/4. So I'm going to put a little tick mark there. Now, this stamp, I want to come down from the top about 1 1/8. So on this one, again, my stamp has a little bit of an edge at the top here. So I'm going to come down about 1 inch. And leave that 1/8 for the top of the stamp so I can see this and get this set up right. So I'm going to mark this on my grid paper so I know that that is straight, and I'm going to put a little tick mark at 1 inch. Now, when I ink this stamp up, it's a much bigger stamp, so I'm taking the ink pad to the stamp in this case. And it's looking pretty good to me. I'm going to give it one more. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so now I'm going to put this back on my grid paper so that it's straight. And I'm going to come down to that 1 inch mark and try to get this centered right to left and bring my stamp down. And there I have my stamp there. Now I'm going to just come come back here. I'll do this one first because I know it's dry. And take my little tick mark, erase my little tick marks there. Okay. And so now I have my pieces that I need here, and we've already got these cut, but I did want to show you how to set that up. So this piece is going to go on here, and then the bistro set is going to go on the inside. All right, so I think that is all the stamping I'm going to do. I did set this up as a note card, so there's no additional stamping on here, but I did want to show you, I did do a little thank you here, and that could easily be set here or here or here, and you could have it be a thank you, a birthday, whatever you'd like. I decided that I liked it kind of plain and having it be a note card. Now, in addition, I did use a little bit of gold washi tape on the outside of this piece of card here, that is the 4 inches. Now, this is what's left over out of the Year of Cheer paper set or designer washi tape from the holiday catalog, and I just have a bit of it to use up. You could accomplish the same thing by cutting foil strips that are 1/4 of an inch long and adhering them on either side. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my washi tape here on this piece. And what I did was I came in just a little tiny bit from the end so that I left a tiny little margin on the outside of that, and I'll bring that up so you can see it. You can see there the gold washi tape, and I left a very small margin, 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit less. That's not very straight as I look at it. So I will reset that to be nice and straight, and then just wrap those pieces around the back to secure them. And I thought it added just the little touch that I wanted here to give this card just a little bit of sparkle. So now I'm going to set the other edge down here. There we go. Now my pieces are all ready to go on my card. Now the coloring. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do about the coloring, and then I'm going to go ahead and color this, and I'm going to speed it way up so that you don't have to spend a lot of time, but I do want you to see what I did to do the coloring. Okay, so the very first thing I did was I used the light smoky slate, and you could use watercolor pencils, you could use markers, you could use anything you'd like. I like using the Stampin' Blends. So on the card here, what you'll see is that every other slat on the awning I colored gray. On the little bistro chairs themselves, anything that looked like ironwork, and on the table I used the light gray, and I went around the rim of the window. Then I used a light blue, and I used a light blue, I'll bring this up so you can see it, and I did just the bottom and the edge on each of the panes of panes here so that it looked a little bit like glass. And then I used that same blue on the coffee cups. So that is those two colors. Then I used the light Calypso Coral on the brick, on the bistro front here, and on the floor of the bricks of the bistro set. Then I used the color lifter on these bricks to bring that color up and make it quite a bit lighter. Okay, so that's those. Then I used this bronze color for the seat and the tabletop of the little chairs. Then for the flowers, I did 2 of the outside flowers, top and bottom, and that also includes this piece, in the light yellow and the dark cherry cobbler to look more reddish. Then there's these little, I don't know what they are, berry sprays, and I used the pumpkin pie on those, just touching them down. And then I used the Bermuda Bay. These other little flowers here have like a bud on them. And so I made all of those the Bermuda Bay. Then I used the light Old Olive to color in all of the leaves. And I think that is everything. Now I'm going to speed this up considerably while I do my coloring, and I'll be back in a flash. Okay, there's all of my coloring, and now I can kind of put my scene and my card together. So the first thing that can happen is this piece can get laid down on my card base here, and I'm just going to use some snail to do that. Now I thought since this that it would be, if you wanted to do something, I suppose you could cut this piece out very small and put it back on a piece that was embossed with like the brick wall, and that would give your card a little bit more texture. And that would just be personal preference, what kind of appeal to you. So I'm going to set my card on here, and if I've done this right, this will fit nicely over this space, which it does, and still allow me to see a little of the brick here. But first I have to put my bistro tables in place, and I have found that in order to get the chairs to show with the little brick underneath it, that these little chairs need to get set sort of in the middle of this window. In this particular case, the way it was stamped, they need to be just a little bit that way, and just under the second pane in the glass seems to be the place that they look the best. And so I will put, where's my silicone mat? I'm flying without a net here. Put some snail on the back of my bistro set here, and put that in place where I dry fit it and I know that it's going to fit the card well. So there's my bistro set in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this piece on dimensionals. And I'm going to use quite a few of them, small ones and large ones. I'm going to put them in the corners and around here, and a couple of smaller ones here, because I want this oval to be supported. So there we go with my card front, and I see that I've got, this piece was a little bit longer. I didn't get it put down exactly right, but I need to trim off the bottom here, which I will do. So there's the exterior of my card, colored and done, and I just think that's really very attractive and pretty clean and simple. I mean, it's a little fussy because of the coloring, but not too bad. So then what I'm going to do on this piece is, since it's the inside of the card and I don't want it to have any more dimension, I'm going to just put some snail on this and put this into place on the inside of my card. And then the other thing that I did was I took my stamp of my little bistro set and used my Archival black ink, and I put an image of the bistro set down here at the bottom. And I think that makes for a nice decoration, ties the front and the back, front and the inside of the card together. So I'm just going to take this little corner here and set this stamp down. There we go. This stamp set just stamps beautifully. It's really very nice. So there is my card and project for the day. Let me move a few of these things out of the way and bring back my sample card here. See, on this one, I left these chairs a little bit loose. Actually put a glue dot a little further down, and then left these chairs so they came loose a little bit. And I kind of like that dimension on the front of it. These I glued down tight, but there is the project for the day, and I hope you give it a try. And I want to thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do appreciate it. And this is all available in the new catalog. And again, it is called Charming Café, and you can get this one as a bundle. So you can get the stamp set and the die set, and you save 10% when you buy them that way. But I just think this is such a pretty little card and just very different. And I used my Stampin Blends, but like I said, you could be using anything you'd like, your watercolor pencils, any number of things. And all of it can be purchased on my website, www.lbedinger.stampinup.net. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator. And or you could join my team. I'd also love to have you on my team. There's special incentives this time of year through the end of March for joining Stampin' Up! In addition to the $125 worth of product for $99, you also get your choice in the main catalog or the occasions catalog of any other 2 stamp sets you'd like to have. So that plus the $40 in product from me for joining my team means that you can get almost $200 worth of product when you join in the first quarter. And so that's it for me. I will be back soon. Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any videos. And I'll be back with more projects and more cards. Bye!